Hey, what's up guys? It is MetaGamesGX here, and I just wanted to talk about the best board breakers going into the next format because there's a lot of talk about this becoming more of a board breaker format now that hand traps have kind of been limited in their effect with things like Appaloosa being removed from the game and these end boards becoming a bit more weaker and more susceptible to just a single board breaker completely breaking it. Really, the only deck currently that makes a board that requires two board breakers at the moment is yugioh, because they make a Varudris plus a Fiendsmith Desiree, which is definitely hard to get through without anything because that outs Dark Ruler no more. So you need two to basically out it, but most decks cannot really play around Dark Ruler unless you're like Vanadium. So it's also something we have to consider and talk about the best board breakers and why other ones aren't as good. So let's talk about Dark Ruler No More. Dark Ruler No More has been a staple since last format and decks that run board breakers, and really people's side decks as well, because a lot of the time people are setting up these huge boards with tons of negates, and Dark Ruler ends up being the one-stop shop to breaking that board, since a lot of decks, as I mentioned, can't just negate a Dark Ruler No More unless they have a Fiendsmith's Desiree or something to that effect. So Dark Ruler No More being a one card just turn off a board is going to always be a good thing. Plus, with Triple Tactics Thrust looking to be a really good staple this format, I definitely think that people could definitely be running stuff like Dark Ruler No More because it is a thrust target as well. Now, Forbidden Droplet is kind of conversely the other card. People debate what forever and ever, what is better, Dark Ruler or Forbidden Droplet this format. Well, Forbidden Droplet has always been more flexible than Dark Ruler because you can chain it to a card, and obviously it sends for cost as well, so it requires more cards than Dark Ruler and targets less. It covers less than Dark Ruler, but because it's a quick effect and you get to pitch cards from hand, it ends up, and it makes it also so your opponent cannot respond with certain cards, whatever you end up sending for cost. So it could potentially be a better Dark Ruler. So what is better this format? I think I tried out Droplet in my deck profile where I got first place and I thought it was okay. I said in the deck profile, but I said these could honestly be something else. I thought they were serviceable at best, kind of thing. So overall, upon more testing, I think Forbidden Droplet, while still being a very solid board breaker this format, definitely has other things that are cutting into the top decks a little harder in terms of things like Dark Ruler No More. And then there's other cards like Book of Eclipse. So Book of Eclipse is my favorite board breaker for the last like 2 formats or so. It was a card that a lot of people used originally in kashtira format because it was a one card out for the best board that kashtira could make. Now, why is it good right now though? Because it's a dual use kind of card. It's good going first and going second. Of course, it's a quick play, but it has utility outside of that, even where if you chain Book of Eclipse when you go normal summon on your monster that has a trigger effect on normal summon or special summon to search a card or something, you can, and your opponent ends up imperming it or negating it by targeting it with Dracostapelia, some sort of target effect negation, you can chain Book of Eclipse to end up flipping your monster, and then that will basically fizzle the targeted effect so that your effect of Aluber will go off to search Branded Fusion, or your effect of Alistair will go off to search Magical Meltdown. I know that's a bad example this format, but right, RIP Alistair. But then you're also able to use Book of Eclipse to out boards because you can basically force a Omni Negate at that point, or if there's no Omni Negate on the board, you can basically end up using Book of Eclipse to flip face down any effect negates that might be, an issue on the board, of course. Also, it can force an Ash because your opponent can also Ash it, so it's very good for decks like Branded in that case. Trades really well into Desiree, it trades pretty well into Varudris, because you can just chain it onto Desiree and then it won't be face up to negate it, and then the negate won't go off. Then, of course, Triple Tactics Thrust, I think, is probably the next best board breaker, because with cards like Grass Looks Greener coming back, and of course, just board breakers coming more into fruition. Triple Tactics Thrust has been a card that's just been waiting for decks to kind of just pick it up for a format, honestly. Outside of the decks, it's just obviously good in, so I think that we'll see more decks start siding and maybe even manning Thrust, because there's lots of shifter decks, of course, so you can use Triple Tactics Thrust to set a D barrier going first or going second. You can use it to search out just Dark Ruler no more, but then it could also search out things like Evenly Matched and other normal board breakers, even like Herald the Abyss, which can just deal with purely, which I don't think is something you should really have to think about this format, but if purely starts becoming a rogue contender, you do have that in your pocket. You also get to side other floodgates too that are normal spells. So, you know, I think it's really good to be able to play through things like Tenpai and Ritual Beast, being able to search these cards, going into D barrier, call Fusion against Ritual Beast into D barrier, call Synchro versus Tenpai. It just basically beats these decks. And speaking of Evenly Match, I think Evenly Match is still fantastic this format. You know, there's way less Omni Negates still with Baron and Savage gone. I think the only deck, it's of course great against Yubel, but they always make an Omni Negate between a Varudris or a Desiree most of the time. So you won't be able to really resolve Evenly Match unless you have a second board breaker. So I think against most other decks though, Evenly Match is super solid right now because it will be able to dismantle most of the boards, especially like things like Labyrinth if they aren't going for the hand rip, or you know, other boards that just decks that build up huge boards, of course, like Rescue Ace and of course Snake Eye. Of course, you have the classic Triple Tactics Talents, which basically just gives you a hand rip at this point. With how many board or still hand traps are still flying around, I think it's still a decent option, and also just its ability to board break is quite nice depending on the deck. There's no more taking Appaloosa, which kind of sucks, but other decks will have other options for you to take. And then there's also other options like Shaddoll Fusion, which you'd think only puts a body on board, but if you make the Shaddoll app clone by sending Shaddoll Dragon and Nel Shaddoll Genius, you are going to be able to get 3 interruptions to board break your opponent, because the app clone will be able to negate a face-up card on the field, and then the Nel Shaddoll Genius will be able to negate a face-up effect monster on the field, and then the Shaddoll Dragon will be popping a back row. So this is actually one of the best ways throughout the Yubel board, because if it goes through, you'll be able to hit the Nightmare Pain, and you will be able to hit other things like the Varudris, the Phantom of Yubel, and you will be able to also chain block it so that you can make it so that, you know, your effects get through that you want to get through. You also have new options such as the Grass Looks Greener, and at first glance, you might be like, oh, this isn't a board breaker, but if you've ever used this card in a deck which you have really good mills in, it is basically your best board breaker because it sets up your engine and it also lets you basically get free bodies. So, you know, a Grass Looks Greener with a Triple Tactics Thrust package is going to be really devastating in this upcoming format when you're able to just go second, search out the grass, and then go mill 30, mill a Shaddoll Dragon, mill, you know, a Tearlaments Shiren, mill a Shaddoll Beast, mill a, you know, bunch of branded cards, mill Infernoid cards, you know, fill up your graveyard, of course, and Triple Tactics Thrust just acts as 3 other copies for this card, and you might be like, how is that a board breaker? It's because it's putting you so far ahead. You're already setting up your combo lines, you're already, and if you're activating effects that trigger off of the grass, you're already winning the game. So Ultimate Slayer looks like a great option on paper also for this format, but I'd say I've heard a lot of people also talk about it, but I think it's overall this is still not going to be the format for it, because Ultimate Slayer at its core can basically only really play around monster effects, and right now with a format of Desiree setting up with a Unchained trap card to basically allow Desiree to chain to things like Dark Ruler No More already, Ultimate Slayer falls into the same category as Dark Ruler No More almost this format, except it doesn't cover as much value at least. So Ultimate Slayer, while it can get a card into your extra deck from the graveyard, which allows you to send Entis, which gives you another pop, I do think overall it just means that your opponent will be able to chain their trap card and negate with Desiree, so it's overall not the best option in the world, this format. And also, I did want to talk about super polymerization because I think super polymerization is arguably the best board breaker this format when it is able to make most of your hands be able to crack most boards with just engine. And like I mentioned before, for a U-Bell board, you need two board breakers to crack that board, but with super poly, with decks like Branded or other decks that already have board breaking capabilities through like their extra deck or just their engine, I think things like Super Poly actually gets to make it even better and allows you to crack a board like Yubel very easily because you can take out their two best monsters in Desiree and Varudris with the Super Poly to make a Draco Stapelia, which in decks like Branded already main deck, so that means you aren't really commanding too much space. I think Garura and Mudragon still clean up rogue decks very nicely in this kind of wide open meta, besides the decks at the top end like Fire King, Branded, and Yubel. So yeah, guys, what did you think of this video? We have been discussing the best cards of this upcoming format. I wanted to hit all the beats. We're going to talk about hand traps next. So if this video gets 100 or 50 likes, we're going to get the hand trap video out there. Comment down below what you guys, what your favorite board breaker is this format, and we will be seeing you guys next time. MetaGamesGX signing out.